everyone out there in Banjo land, Mike Henning here. Got another little mini banjo lesson for you today. This time we're going to talk about going from G to D and back to G again. I got 10 transitions worked out in a couple different styles, and I'm going to work through them and show you some concepts and kind of some ideas on how I created these. And if you like what you're hearing, you can subscribe at the end and you'll get the free tab sent to you with all the transitions. Alright, here we go. Here's 10 transitions from G to D. Alright, so let's start with our first transition from G to D. And remember, the first measure, we're going to have 2 measures of each chord, 2 measures of G and 2 measures of D. And then back again, we're going to go back and forth. And the first measure of each chord is just going to be a basic roll. And the second measure of each chord is going to be the transition. So the transitions are actually only 1 measure long, but the first measure before that is kind of a basic roll so you can practice, rolling on the chord that you're going to be on before you go to your transition. So you can always take those out if you want, if you don't like that, but just remember that the first measure of each chord is just a basic roll, and the second measure of each chord is the actual transition. Alright, so here's the first one. So we're going to start pretty easy. We're going to get a little harder as we go on, but this one, we're basically, and remember, I'm not going to break them all down note for note. You can refer to the tab if you want to. I'm just going to kind of show you the general underlying principles of what we're trying to do with each transition. Okay? So let's first get our notes that we're going to, because anytime you connect chords, you want to think in terms of the root note, at least when you're starting. So we're starting on our open G. That's our third open string. Third string open is our G. And we've got 2 options for our root note for D. We got our open 4th string, and we've got our open 1st string. So the underlying transition is from the 3rd string. In this case, we're going to go down to the 4th string. And then we're going to go back to the 3rd string. So take out all the fluff and everything. That's the underlying transition that you want to hear, is the G note, and then down to the D, and then back to the G. So that's all we're doing, and we're just going to connect those 2 notes with either some rolls, or in this case, we're going to walk down using our G major scale. So we're going to start with a roll. So I'm walking down the scale, G, F sharp, E, then I'm walking to an open D, walking back up. I'm not using the exact same notes to walk back up, but the same general idea. Again, refer to the tab if you're in doubt. So okay, so remember, a common question I always get asked is, when you change chords, are you changing scales? Do I change to, when I go to the D chord, do I change to the D major scale or something like that? That's a really common question people have. But in this case, let's just think in G. So we're using our G major scale the whole time. A lot of the notes in the D major scale are actually also in the G major scale. So we're gonna stay pretty close to home and just think in terms of G. And at least that's where we're going to grab kind of our passing notes. So when we're walking down and back up, we're still using notes from the G major scale. We're not actually changing scales when we change to the D chord. That's a question I get asked a lot. So you can try it with different rolls, but remember, we're just trying to get from a G down to a D, and then back up. I'm just using some pinches to kind of accent the melody, or accent that walk down, excuse me, not the melody, accent that walk down. And again, refer to the tab if you want the exact notes that I'm playing. Okay, here's transition 2. We're going to do more of a melodic one this time. One more time. So this time we're going to walk up to a D note before we walk down. This time we're going to go up to our high D 1st string, and we're walking up the scale do, re, mi. So G, A, B, C. And our next note up is a D. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you've played dueling banjos, that kind of thing. So we're just walking straight up the scale. The only difference is we're going to do it melodically. So instead of playing it single string like that, we're gonna go up to the 7th fret and walk up that scale melodically. And since we just had 4 notes, I just put a little pinch before it. So then we're going into our D, just a D lick here. And then we're going to walk back down the scale. D, C, B, A, G. I'm just doing some pinches there to fill it up. Again, refer to the tab if you want the exact notes. That should be good ear training to practice. I'm just walking straight down the scale. D, C, B, A, G. You could walk back down melodically too if you wanted. I like to mix it up. Another little point of reference here is on our D chord, we're not playing a full D. We're actually just playing a lick that would work over a G chord too. So when you hear it on its own, it doesn't sound like it's not a big happy D chord. But a lot of times on banjo, we might be just playing one of the notes of the chord. We don't always have to play all 3 notes of the chord. We can let the band do that sometimes. So that's a cool technique. So listen to it one more time. And remember, sometimes you got to have the whole band to get the full context of it. So you're not going to hear you're not hearing those full chords spelled out. We're kind of relying on the rest of the band to do that in this case. All right, so here's transition number 3. One more time. So this time we're just using a little G fill lick to get down. If you've played Foggy Mountain Breakdown, it's a common fill lick. You also maybe have heard it like this. You can do it that way too. It's just a common Scruggs fill lick. And then we're going to hit the open D. And this time we're actually going to go into our full D chord. And there's kind of a common little pattern I've heard in a lot of Scruggs style stuff is you're playing out of this chord shape and you're doing this little walk down. So we'll slow it down. We're adding some fill notes around it, but the essence of the little walk down is D, B, A, F sharp, and then back to our open G. So probably heard little things like that, or this is a common one, You can use it up here for your G chord. It's a movable lick. So it's a really good one to practice. So we're just going into that. And again, refer to the tab if you want the exact notes, but the essence of the lick is so D, B, A, F sharp, G. And there's different ways to do that. You can do it with pull-offs or that kind of thing, or hammer on. Try some different ways. There's you can get a lot of mileage out of that little position just using that. You're basically taking your 3rd finger and moving it back and forth from the 3rd and 4th string and changing those notes. That's another really common one. So that whole idea can spawn. You could do it 10 or 15 transitions based on that little position and just working those different licks. So I didn't have time to break all those down and show them all to you, but that's where you can just think of that as a position, and you just try and come up with different ideas. Go back and forth between those notes. A lot of these transitions too, you just have to think of how much time do I have. The longer, in this case, we only did 1 measure transitions, but if you wanted more practice, you could extend them out to longer 2 measure transitions or 3 measure. That's where you can start adding your own flavor and all these notes are going to work. You just have to figure out how much time do I have and how many of them can you fit in, how fast is the song. So those are all little things you can be thinking of when you're making up these transitions. The point of this exercise is just to get you started thinking of some ideas of transitioning from G to D and back again. These aren't the end-all ones. I mean, you can memorize these ones if you like, but what I would do is use these as jumping off points to start your own ideas. Alright, so here's transition number 4. It's very similar to transition 1, except we're just going to walk down chromatically instead of down a major scale. So let me play it once. One more time. So we're just walking down chromatically. G, F sharp, F natural, E, and then D, and then walking back up. So there's a whole bunch of ideas that could come out of that chromatic walk down, It really just depends on how much time you have. You could slide or hammer them on too, Or too. So again, or you can pinch them. Or you can pick it a little bit more, So just a kind of a chromatic walk down. We're breaking out of our major scale a little bit there and adding an F natural to give it a little more chromatic sound. So here's transition number 5. This one's a little more melodic. One more time. So we're using kind of some more, kind of a folded scale idea on this one. We're going. Just kind of using some more, again, we're using our major scale. We're just up at the 7th fret, 7th, 5th fret, kind of this basic G major melodic scale up here. Those are our notes we're using. We need a measure to get up to that note, so we're just filling it with some scale notes. Then we're getting up to our D, that's our goal. Remember, we're getting from our G to our high D. That's our transition. Take away all the fluff, that's the transition, G to D. So we're walking up to that note with a little melodic lick. Then we're doing a little roll, then we're sliding up to the 7th fret, up to our, what would be our D bar chord, except we're just going to play with 2 fingers and do a little melodic lick back down. One more time, here's that little lick. And refer to the tab if you want the exact notes. Alright, here's transition number 6. One more time. This one you could use this for a kickoff too. It actually works in the key of G, but it's a good, we're actually gonna, this one, it's a little bit longer transition. We're starting on our G note, and we want to get up to our high D, but we're actually going down even lower to our low D, and we're just going to do kind of a scale lick up the notes. So we're doing an open 2 hammer-on, and then an open 2 hammer-on on the 3rd string, and then an open 1 hammer-on on the 2nd string. So open 2 on the 4th string, open 2 on the 3rd string, and then open 1 on the 2nd string. So basically it's kind of that dueling banjos walk up again. We're just starting a little bit lower. Again, we have more time to fill, so we're starting even lower. Instead of going, which we could do, you'd have to pinch. You could do it like that, but we're starting lower. And again, I'm just using my thumb, and then index. And then I'm getting up to a high D note. And then I'm just doing kind of a straight roll on a D. So this is more of a bluegrass lick. Again, I'm not playing a big happy D chord. I'm basically playing a lick that would also work over a G chord. I'm kind of prematurely going back to the G and letting the band play the D chord for me. Alright, so one more time, here's the lick. Alright, here's lick number 7. It's more of a bluegrassy lick. Let me play it and then I'll break it down. Okay, so we're doing our standard roll, forward roll on the G like we've been doing. Then we're going to do a 2-3 hammer on the 3rd string, alternating thumb roll, and then a pull off, 3-2 pull off, down to the 2nd fret on the 4th string. That's good practice. Then we're using that note to connect us to our D, low D. Then we're doing a forward roll on the D. And then we're doing kind of some half scale notes down. So we're not walking straight down the scale. We don't have enough time for that. So we're just doing 2 notes. C, A, G. Kind of if you were in your D7 chord. We're kind of doing that style of a lick there. Except we're just filling it, pinching those notes because we only have 2 beats to do it on. I would use your 2nd finger when you get down to that 2nd fret on the 4th string. Like that. Alright, here's transition 8. This one's kind of more, pretty easy, just a little chromatic thing. One more time. So we're starting with a little walk down. So even simpler than our longer chromatic one. We're just doing G, and then E flat or D sharp, and then D, open D. So we're just walking down 3 notes. Then we're going into our D chord. Now we're going to do kind of a scale, melodic scale lick to get back to our G. And refer to the tab if you want the exact notes. I'll play it slow. Again, what I was talking about earlier, this is one of those ones where we're not switching to a D major scale even though we're playing over a D chord. So we're staying pretty close to our G major scale here. So this is one of those situations, like I said, where we're not really playing a D major scale, even though we're playing over a D chord. We're actually just basically walking right down a G major scale. Again, we're trying to pull back to G. Think of this is a good exercise in thinking of where does stuff resolve to. So that's why we're talking about our root notes, because we want to land and end on a root note. That's going to give our lick kind of completion. So when you use the G major scale, even though we're playing over a D chord, it's giving the indication that the pull of the notes wants to bring us back to a G chord and resolve on that open G. If we use the D major scale, the notes would imply that we want to end on the D major scale. So when we end on a G, it would actually sound more like a chord change rather than a kind of an ending lick. So that's something to think about. You always want to think of where you're resolving to. All right, here's lick number 9. Okay, so this time we're going to, instead of getting down to a low D chord, we're going to cheat a little bit and we're going to land on this A note of our D chord. So our transition actually on this one is just a G, open G, and then we're going to kind of land on our A note of our D chord. So it's still in our chord. It's not the root note, so it's not going to spell out the chords quite as much. On this one, we're going to have to kind of use the band to play the D chord for us. So let me play it real slow. So we're actually walking up from a D. So we're going D, and then hammer on onto the F sharp, open G, and then we're going up to our A. But we're still playing our D chord, so think in D, we're just playing the A note of the D chord. And then we're going to do a forward reverse roll on the D chord. And then we're going to end on a G. And notice how we're using the 5th string there a little bit to bring us back to G. So one more time. There's a bunch of licks that you can use out of this position. You're just forward reversing, rolling on a D chord. You can do something like that, or you could do a little fancier. Something like that. Okay? Here's one more transition. Here's the last one. One more time. Okay, this one is kind of just more of a lick. We're not walking as much between the chords. We kind of are, but not quite as much. We're not walking down the scale. We're just playing a lick. So our transition here is G, and then we're going to use the F sharp, and then that's going to get us down to our D. Except the only little thing we're going to do is we're going to do 2 hammer-ons onto that F sharp from 3 to 4. That's a good thing to practice. Just I'm using my thumb on my right hand. I'm using my 2nd and 3rd finger there. You can try it with different ones though. So you're going. That gets you into your D. Then I'm kind of just doing a forward roll to get us back. Those last 4 notes are kind of cool of the D. That one we also have to end with our index finger of our right hand because we're playing a thumb right before that on our D chord. So I'm forward rolling into that final G. Alright, one more time. Here's the last one. So hopefully that gives you some ideas to work on and stuff to think about. The best thing to do with these transitions is you got to experiment a lot, you got to try a lot of stuff, and you have to try them with a real band or in a real jam session, because sometimes stuff sounds good or not as good when you're just playing it by yourself, but if you add the context of the band, suddenly it'll work or suddenly it won't work. So you always have to test your ideas against real practice tracks or a real jam session, because sometimes when you're just playing it by yourself, if you don't have the whole sense of the harmonies and the surrounding chords, it can give you a false sense that the lick is working or isn't working. So that's what I would do, is always test these ideas against real tracks and real chords. The other thing is, remember, a lot of times we're thinking in time here, not as much in what actual licks we're doing. So we just want our transitions to be a measure long. In this example, you can always extend them out later, but I think starting with a 1 measure transition is easier. It'll force you into a kind of a box that'll actually help you create some ideas. If you start with 2 wide open of just any transition, any length of time, chances are you're going to get kind of stuck and you're not going to be able to think of something. A lot of these are just walking down the scale. You don't have to think too crazy. A lot of it's just adding some slides or adding some hammer-ons, and there's not a lot much more to it than that sometimes. This is a good example too of when we might have to think like another instrument. We might have to learn some bass walks or some guitar runs. A lot of times these transitions are based on stuff you might do on a different instrument. The banjo is not necessarily the instrument that does lots of bass walking between the chords, but if you want some good transitions, that's an easy spot to look and steal some ideas. So think in terms of other instruments sometimes too, and you'll be able to come up with some more ideas, hopefully. All right, if you like what you're hearing, you can subscribe below and you can get the free tab sent to you. All right, good luck.